The City Press is reporting that South African soldiers deployed to the volatile northern parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo are working under unbearable conditions. Over 600 members are forced to share 6 pit toilets. They have no kitchens to prepare their meals, and they also do not have access to doctors as well as nurses. This is due to a lack of funds. The South African National Defence Forces or Defence Unions, Precarious, Advocate Precarious, is joining us now to talk to us about what is being reported here and whether or not indeed it is fact. Advocate, good evening to you and thank you for your time. In her reporting today, Erica Gibson, the journalist who has written this story, an experienced reporter at that on military matters, she points out that the South African National Defence Force has enough experience on foreign deployments. What do you think, in your view, has gone wrong with this latest deployment to the DRC?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I think the first thing we need to realize is that the deployments that South Africa has been doing over the past 2 decades was really, as far as the DRC is concerned, under the auspices of the UN. Now, of course, the UN was sent backing by the DRC government, and so a lot of the support that was provided by the UN in terms of equipment, infrastructure, and so forth in these bases has been withdrawn. And it means that South Africa's troops has been deployed there under circumstances where they now have to set up a base from anew. And also with, of course, an offensive set of mindset, not a defensive one, as the bases were usually structured. And that is something that I think is quite a learning curve for the Defence Force, because we haven't really practiced that, if I understand the situation correctly. And you know, what you don't practice regularly, you're not going to execute very well. But apart from that, there are financial constraints beyond the control of these soldiers. There is no flight aircraft available to take in the necessary equipment and stuff that the soldiers would need on a deployment to support them fully.
Yeah. The reporting around this deployment to the DRC, Advocate, has been that these soldiers are sent to the DRC to die, and that is premised on the month of February, the reports that came that said 2 soldiers had died there because they simply had no equipment to defend themselves. 2 weeks later, or should we say 2 weeks ago, 2 soldiers were injured as a result of shrapnel from a mortar bomb, it is understood. Tell us, to your understanding, the characterization that this deployment is some kind of suicide mission. How precarious is this deployment?
This deployment is very precarious. These people are at great risk. That is just simply the facts. This deployment was very hastily decided, and one rather gets the impression that, you know, if there is a plan, the plan is not very clearly communicated, because certainly the members on the ground being deployed are being left in the lurch, so to speak, because of these equipment shortages and so on. No, the situation is very precarious.
And is it pure coincidence, Advocate? I'll beg for your indulgence here, because I'm going to try and connect 2 things which perhaps you may think are completely unrelated. So the South African National Defence Force, according to this report, has no cargo plane to transport artillery and indeed the essentials for the soldiers to take care of themselves whilst they're out there. And it is in part because there is no money. But at the same time, we have a court case that is being fought by the former defense minister, where she is trying to prevent South Africa's law enforcement from arresting her. What are the genesis of that case? It is that a contractor, a former contractor, who was contracted by the SANDF at the time that Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula was defense minister. This contractor, the main job was for her to transport military equipment of the SANDF, which would have been, I think, from outside back into South Africa. Is it pure coincidence that we sit here today with no cargo plane to transport this equipment and a former contractor who allegedly has been taking monies and giving to Mapisa-Nqakula allegedly? We sit here today with an SANDF whose funds are completely depleted.
I think the two issues aren't necessarily connected, but I can see where you're coming from with that. I think what we are really seeing in both of those scenarios is just terrible handling of the defense budget, and at that, a budget which keeps on shrinking every year. And so, yeah, in that regard, the two issues is probably linked. And you know, the defense force is really struggling financially. And of course, these kinds of incidents don't help. And of course, when you struggle financially, you're going to find exactly what you find in this report now.
Finally, as we end the conversation, what then happens to these members? Because their conditions are not going to change, these deplorable conditions that they are working under. They're not going to change anytime soon unless and until equipment is sent to them and essentials in order to take care of themselves is delivered to them. What should be the immediate task of the SANDF here?
Well, the immediate task should be to get a hold of a freight aircraft that can carry freight to the members, especially the essential things, to dispatch medical military personnel so that a field hospital at least can be erected, to dispatch field kitchens so that there can be decent facilities to prepare food for these soldiers. And it's really just a question of getting everything together and getting it over there. The problem is we're at the end of our financial year. The money is completely depleted in the department, but hopefully with a new cycle starting, someone will be able to make a plan. But we'll definitely, as from Sandu's side, engage with the Ministry of Defence and the Chief SANDF to see how one can get to solutions and how quickly one can get to it. We are greatly concerned about our members.
Precarious is with the South African National Defence Union. Thank you very much for your time.